Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Friday, and it is game day here at HBCU Game Day. We have SWAC football, I guess you could say this weekend because it is Friday, but man, after this, that's it, because everything else was postponed in the SWAC. So let's get ready to talk about Southern Alabama State, and we bring in our SWAC insider for the first time this spring, Mr. B.J. Jones. Right in the spotlight, in our crosshairs, we have Alabama State and Southern. The last time they played a full season, Southern was 6-1 in the SWAC. Alabama State was about 4-3. I think that season was woulda, shoulda, coulda. They almost won a lot, let some slip away. BJ, does any of that matter now that we're in 2021? Can we look back on the past and draw any conclusions from what we might see tonight?
No, because of the layoff, because of the amount of time that has elapsed since the last time we had football, none of those things really mean anything. I've been telling people, look, when we start this thing off, expect some sloppy football. Expect some sloppy football. It's been over 400 days since the guys have actually had some live game speed, and practice just doesn't get it for you. So it'll be very interesting to see how Alabama State comes into tonight, being at home. They want to get that monkey off their back, get back to their winning ways. The Hornet Faithful haven't had a winning season since 2015, so they're very anxious. And then Jaguar Nation, you've been this close to going to the Celebration Bowl and representing the SWAC. What do you build off of those last two seasons, and what does the 2020/21 spring team look like?
You know, you think about Alabama State, Ezra Gray is a name that automatically comes to mind there. How much of an impact can he have? How much help does he need for Alabama State to have a successful spring?
Southern University boasts one of the best run defenses in the conference and one of the best in the country. And if you can't spread the ball out, getting the ball out to Michael Jefferson and that talented group of receivers that Alabama State has, Ezra Gray toting the load by himself is almost going to be an impossible task. What Southern has in the middle with the linebackers and defensive line, that front seven is nasty. Jordan Lewis, all-conference performer at defensive end. You have to be able to keep them honest and not let them just focus on the run. So if Ezra Gray has a big day, you'll hope that's a sign that the quarterback is doing pretty well for Alabama State because he's keeping Southern honest.
You talk about Michael Jefferson. I think it was that game that we last attended there in Montgomery, man. He had a monster game. And Jefferson is the kind of kid, man, he might hit you 2 or 3 touchdowns, 10 catches, and then you might not see much from him. Like he's kind of up and down, but a really high ceiling he has.
Man, Michael Jefferson, talent-wise, is one of the best receivers you'll see in the conference. He's blessed with size, about 6'4", about 219 pounds. He can go up and get the football. He's one of those guys that you might not see him on the first team SWAC selections, but when you watch him play, when he's at his highest, it's hard to name other receivers in the conference that are as good as he is.
Yeah, absolutely. Southern, coming off this season, man, they were that close. You talked about it a few minutes ago to the Celebration Bowl. What does a new look Southern look like in 2021 as they kind of go through the spring, get ready for the fall? Can they stay at that level? Do you expect some drop off, elevation? What are you thinking with the Jaguars?
The biggest thing is no one knows. One of the things that Southern has done is they've revamped the entire coaching staff almost. New offensive coordinator, new receivers coach, new offensive line coach. They've replaced so much on that coaching staff. What's consistent? The players that are coming back. You still have Devon Ben at the running back position. Ladarius Skelton returns at the quarterback position, as well as Bubba McDaniel. One of the big question marks for Southern offensively, who replaces Hunter Register as that deep threat that they enjoyed. They had a lot of good underneath receivers with Mackey and Washington and some of those other guys. But now who's that deep threat? We looked the last year, it was Hunter Register. He's gone. Who fills that position? Offensive line still solid. And that defense, the Achilles heel for Southern defensively, the last time we saw them was the secondary. Now you get a lot of those guys back, Robert Green, Jacoby Papillon. That secondary is one of the most talented secondaries in the conference. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they start off tonight And how does that secondary line up against a talented group of Alabama State receivers?
Yeah, so much of this discussion really is going to depend on what we see. We don't have much data at all that is going to be of any relevance to talk about, a prediction of what might happen because so much time has passed since they last played. So let's talk about some things just in general here, BJ. Is everybody going to pull out their full arsenal, lay out the entire menu for the spring? Are they going to use this as conditioning, experimentation, controlled scrimmage almost, and give us the full ensemble in the fall? Or is it win at all costs whenever you step out on the field?
It's win at all costs whenever you step on the field. Coach, so you have coaches that will say that in the back of their mind, we just want to get some guys in. But when you're a competitor and you do this, when you step between those lines, that competitive energy, it kicks in. And you go to trying to win the football game, trying to dominate your opponents. That's just, the nature of an athlete. So I think you're going to get people going full blast. I think the only time that we were at liberty to see someone kind of hold back was last week when we saw Jackson State taking on Edward Waters, who was an inferior opponent. No disrespect to Edward Waters. But conference on conference, when you're playing teams that, this thing counts, you're going to get everybody's best shot.
It's curious that you bring that up. Talking to BJ Jones here, our SWAC insider. Glad to have him back on the platform and in the mix. It's been a while. BJ, looking at Jackson State, they ran the ball a lot last weekend, a lot of bubble screens. I was wondering, is that just where they are efficiency-wise with their offense, or are they, keeping a few cards under the table?
I think that's kind of where they are. If you look at the quarterback position, they really struggle with getting the ball down the field. Passes over 15 yards, the quarterbacks were not very accurate. And then, you're going to take what the defense gives you. If you're not hitting that deep ball, it makes no sense to keep going back at it. Take what the defense gives you. So it's going to be very interesting to see over time in the spring as the opponents get a lot tougher, defenses get a lot tougher. Is that still the mentality? Is that still their offensive philosophy? Or do they try to push the ball down the field to kind of keep defenses honest and off that running game?
Alabama A&M. A lot of people aren't talking about them. Jackson State is sucking a lot of air out of the room. There's a lot of conversation about Alcorn simply because they chose not to play. So people are debating that being the only team that opted out in the SWAC. But, man, I'm really excited to see. We won't get to see them. We wouldn't have got to see them anyway this weekend because their first week opponent was Alcorn State. But I'm really excited to see what Akil Glass, what Coach Maynard will bring back and how they'll perform this year, especially opening things up in the Eastern Division with Alcorn going west.
Look, Alabama A&M, one of those teams is laying in the weeds. If you look back 2019, they were also this close to an appearance in the SWAC championship game. We talk about a touchdown pass. Kid was out of bounds and a few inches, and they win that game against Alcorn. Bring back Akil Glass, to me, best quarterback in the conference. 2,000-yard receivers. Brian Jenkins, who was hurt most of 2019, explosive playmaker. The question for Alabama A&M is going to be this. Can the offensive line protect Akil Glass because they lost almost everything up front? And defensively, can you slow people down? You ain't got to stop them, but you at least got to slow them down. And that defense was porous at best in 2019.
BJ, what's one thing that you will watch? What's a question that you're looking to get answered from this, 6-game spring schedule that we'll see that will really bring things into focus for you, that you'll be able to make a really solid prediction for what we might see in the fall?
In the SWAC West, Southern Grambling, who has figured out the quarterback position. Both of them were doing well with inconsistencies at quarterback. But now you have new talent in at both schools. You had a quarterback competition at Southern, new offensive coordinator at Southern. Grambling got a big-time transfer. What do the quarterback positions look like at both of those schools? And then in the SWAC East, between Alabama A&M, Alabama State, and Jackson State, who takes the reins this spring and becomes that beast of the East? A lot of people think that it's Alabama A&M. They're next man up. But I think a lot of people are sleeping on Alabama State. We know where Alabama State was in 2019. They had a couple of games which, if they would have swung their direction, one of them being against Alabama A&M, we look at them completely different. So looking tonight, what does Alabama State look like offensively? Have they fixed their quarterback position? And can that defense still stand tall and stop people the way they did in 2019?
All right, BJ, give us the skinny, man. Like, give us the player's perspective. I've been there. Listen to what I'm saying on this question. So, look, we all know Jackson State on paper, the hype, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is how you run a football program. You want to get people excited, but, they've got the transfers. They've got the recruits. They got all the big names, the stars, kids from FBS schools coming in. How hard is that to make all that mesh? And sometimes do all those stars and where you used to play really mean as much as the fans make it out to be once you get out there on the field? Like the level of competition that's already in place at some of these schools.
Well, when you come in as an FBS transfer, I was one of those guys. When you come in, you have to earn your keep. No one cares in that locker room. The hardest part about when you bring in a lot of FBS transfers, trying to manage personalities and egos. That's the most difficult thing to do. We've seen a lot of teams in the past rack up on FBS transfers, and it did not equate to W's on the field. You just have a lot of talent on paper. So having to manage those egos, then when you get outside of that locker room, you just immediately motivated everyone else. It's the same thing when you're a high school player. You get a chance to play against that 4 or that 5-star. He's going to get your best shot. So those guys are going to get everyone's best shot. Then you got a lot of chirping going on. Jackson State players, they're not shy about what they feel about their program. You saw someone say DBU. That perked up the ears of the defensive backs at Alcorn, even though they're not playing this spring. The defensive back at Southern, defensive backs at Grambling, those programs in the SWAC who have had strong defensive back play over the years, they saw that. They immediately chirped up. So, it's like I said, it's a balance. Managing the egos, you still have to earn your spot no matter where you came from. And then how do those FBS transfers, how do they fit into the current locker room? Because what happens when they don't fit is you end up having a segmented locker room and it gets real cliquish, and that shows up on Saturdays as well.
Oh, talk about that. Go into that. Like, I can experience that from a workplace. I've never played football at any level higher than Nerf. How does that really mess things up, man, when you get those clicks in the locker room?
Oh, man, it messes us up because you don't have that group that's cohesive. One thing about football is a family. Everyone's role's different, but everyone must achieve their goal, do their individual job for the entire unit to move forward. And when you have those clicks, we have, hey, these guys hang out over here, these guys hang out over here. It impacts your chemistry. It impacts, do I trust this guy to do his job? On this assignment, I know that he has this, but do I need to keep my eye on him to make sure that he actually does that, or I need to be over the top of him just in case he misses it? I'm there to make a play. There's so many different things that tie into that, and that people on the outside really don't think about.
I can totally relate to that. I not from a football perspective, but from a broadcast perspective, man, you can be on the set talking, but if that guy or whoever over there on camera 3, if you're not if you're not fully confident, man, it's like you can't focus on the conversation fully because you got one eye over there like, is he about to mess up, man? Is he going to be, have the camera all up my nose, on my ear? So I can relate to that from a 10,000-foot level. That's a very good point there. And not suggesting that, that's what's going on there, but just good, context for the conversation. But overall, man, I'm excited. I'm excited what Jackson State is bringing. I'm excited about, we're hardly even talking about FAMU and Bethune-Cookman coming in, man. But when you just look at the overall picture, it's hard to talk about anything else but the SWAC, man, when you're talking about HBCU football. And it's no disrespect to anyone else, but they just got so much at the same time just blossoming everywhere.
Man, this fall, 21 will be the most anticipated SWAC season I think that we've ever seen. When you look at the amount of talent that's coming to the league, even with Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm looking forward to meet Deion Sanders. Growing up as a child, I wore the bandana. I wore number 2. You know, I did everything like Deion Sanders. I did the headband around the neck. So for him to be in the conference now is like, wow. But just looking at the different coaching staff changes that we've had, the talent influx, I think the SWAC is in a really good place. And when you're talking about in the media, no other FCS conference has been in the media as more as the SWAC outside of the new league that, you know, the ASUN and the WAC. But the SWAC has dominated headlines on, you know, the 4-letter network and everywhere else. And I think it's only going to get better, especially when you throw in FAMU, who's one of the best teams in HBCU football, and Bethune-Cookman, 9-game win streak over FAMU. You throw that into the mix, man, you got an amazing gumbo of SWAC football, and can't wait to dive into it.
Man, that gumbo might be better than some of the stuff I saw you eating down at the Soul Bowl, man. That witch's cauldron that had smoke coming out of.
Yeah, man.
Well, we are definitely looking forward to it. We'll be watching the game tonight. We'll be talking about it afterwards. BJ Jones, our SWAC insider, man, so good to catch up with you again. And thanks for hanging out with us this weekend here at HBCU Game Day.
Appreciate it.